I wanted to begin with a moment of connection and community in light of the heaviness that we are probably feeling in light of the events in our world. So I'd like to take a moment of silence to show respect for and acknowledge the people slain in Christchurch, New Zealand. Thank you for that. I wanted us to focus in on that so that as we talk today, we can hold that in our heart. March is Women's History Month, and I can't help but think of one of the world's youngest political leaders, New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, who at age 38 finds herself in a position of having to respond to and address something truly tragic. A mass shooting, a massacre at a mosque in Christchurch in New Zealand. Now, whether you agree with her politics or position is not the point, but to me there is something truly assuring and refreshing about the clarity and directness with which she responded and the swiftness of it. She is unapologetically willing to take a stand, a bold stand, a definite stand on a tough subject. Public massacres by gun, even though doing so has stimulated harsh criticism and responses, just like it does in our nation, where we have not yet learned how to discuss truly troubling subjects with civility. Now, I'm guessing that when Jacinda Ardern set her mind on becoming the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she probably didn't have it in her mind that she would one day have to deal with public massacre in a place of worship or the apparent rise of white supremacist hate groups emboldened by their role models in world culture. Yet it turns out that is exactly what is hers to deal with. Now, who is to say? Perhaps she is in the position that she is in to be able to put in motion the changes her nation needs because she is the right person in the right time, in the right place. Maybe you are too. Maybe you're facing what you're facing in your life right now. Maybe you're in the position that you are in right now so that you are able to do the good thing that only you can do for this world, for the good of all, and to the harm of none. I admire people of action like Prime Minister Ardern, who can take a clear and definite stand, even if it's truly unpopular. Because I'm not like that always, I want everyone to like me. You know how that goes. I don't like to trouble the waters, and I take a while to find my position, And the problem with that approach to life I've found is that it sometimes allows the unacceptable to go unattended to. It sometimes allows the unacceptable to become normal. So I'm celebrating Women's History Month today by turning to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern as my role model for speaking up and taking a stand quickly and definitively, and doing so without losing civility or dignity. I have a lot to learn from her. I think our leaders have a lot to learn from her, but that's my personal opinion. It reminds me of Queen Esther, who the Jewish world celebrates at this time of year in the festival of Purim. That's March 2021. I'm going to be talking about Queen Esther at the end of the month, March 31st. It's a bit late, but I'm going to be talking about her. And I'm going to be talking about it because Queen Esther, too, had an inner drive to maintain the integrity of who she was in her position, and then following that up with action, measured action, that she knew she had to do for the good of all, even though it was very difficult and personally threatening. Maybe you felt like that. A deep call from within you to do the right thing. A deep call to step up your game for good. And felt that it's frightening to do so. And unpopular. In Queen Esther, we will learn, when she made her decision to do something to save her nation from unjust and corrupt politicians, she said, "And if I perish, I perish. So be it." Now, that is a woman of resoluteness, of conviction, of clarity, of principle. And she understood that the common good was greater than her personal convenience and comfort and safety. If this stirs you, then you don't want to miss March 31st when we hear her story. It's thrilling. It is. And by the way, next year we're going to do a focused presentation on Women's History Month all the way through March. We're going to do that. And I mention it because somebody asked me recently, why do we observe Black History Month or Women's History Month? And why not this or that History Month? The truth is, anything that makes us a little more aware is worth celebrating. And especially celebrating the underserved, the underrepresented, the underappreciated segments of society. That's helpful. Particularly if we say we are interested in the common good and we teach oneness. Now, it turns out that there is something to observe, something to be aware of, something to celebrate almost every day somewhere in the world. Now, the people at holidayscalendar.com know that. They're a small group of enthusiasts. They love history and they love science and art, and they realize that somewhere in the world, there was at least one important event every week, every single week of the year, that somebody was celebrating. And they put that all together on a website that celebrates these significant events in history to help create awareness of them. Oh, it's heart-opening to visit that site, Holidays Calendar. It's mind-expanding. It really is to learn about all of the things that people around the world consider in their heart to be important and celebration-worthy. Of course, March is marked as the month-long celebration of women's contribution to society and history. It's celebrated in many places, Australia, United States, the United Kingdom, many places. Maybe you already knew that. What I didn't know and found out on their site is that the history of Women's History Month has got a little local connection to us. Starting in March 8, 1978, a Sonoma school district participated in a week-long study of women's history. Now, at the time, that didn't seem particularly significant, but it became quite relevant when other organizations paid attention to the work of the Sonoma School District and brought it to the attention of the White House. And in 1980, it led to President Jimmy Carter making a proclamation that March 8, 1980 would begin National Women's History Week. And in that proclamation, President Carter said that women are the unsung heroes of history and that their contributions are so often unnoticed by society in general. And thus began the movement, which had really begun earlier before, but officially over the next years, schools started across the country to begin to expand. Women's History Week became a month until eventually Congress designated the whole month of March as Women's History Month. And all United States presidents since then have issued an annual proclamation to that effect. One of our past presidents proclaimed this, and here are the images of the people he is mentioning. It is about the passion and the vision of women educators like Mary McLeod Bethune, with only $1.50 in her pocket, founded a school for young black women. It is about the perseverance and pioneering spirit of women like Margaret Chung, the first Chinese-American woman physician who supported herself through medical school by washing dishes. It is about Alice Paul's fight for the vote and Elizabeth Wanamaker Petrovich's campaign to end discrimination against Alaska Natives. It is about the writings of Zora Neale Hurston, the paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe, and the leadership of labor organizer Dolores Huerta, and the trailblazing artistry of photographer Margaret Bourke-White. It is also about the millions of unsung women whose contributions have made life better for their families and their communities, and I say for the world. And I want to propose that there is a way that you and I can celebrate Women's History Month and our theme of oneness all at the same time, with a week-long spiritual practice that's quite adaptable. And it's something you can even do with your family, because it works like this. You take a moment before each meal, and together think about the women in your life who've played an important role in you becoming the person you are today, and name them. And then secondly, while you're at it, for oneness' sake, you might think about everything in your life that had to happen just the way it did for you to be able to enjoy who you are and the food you eat and the utilities you consume. In other words, a week-long gratitude awareness exercise, which is one of the pillars of living a spiritual life. It's an exercise that helps us not only embrace our interconnectedness, but also helps us value our differences in one splendid whole. Now, oneness is our theme this month, so I want to talk about that. And I want to use the author Donna Hens. I think that's how you say her name. She was asked to speak on team building, with special emphasis on creating alliances and, developing community. And she responded with something very interesting. She said, look, from a shamanic point of view, there is no such thing as opposing sides. There's only one side. Not us and them, only we. So creating alliances, she said, is redundant, because we're already aligned. Just like making enemies is against our nature. Here's how she said it in her words. These are terrible times of artificial division, manipulated resentment, and fear. The real dynamic being played out right now is not about warring religious, economic, or nationalistic factions. The struggle is actually between those who believe the world is defined in terms of opposition, war or peace, right or wrong, rich or poor, with us or against us, and those who are able to see things in a more holistic, congruent manner. That gave rise to 5 considerations in me when I read that. 1, am I, as a spiritual practitioner, staying mindfully open to inclusion in my worldview? 2, in my spiritual practice, am I mindfully staying with the reality of our shared spiritual heritage? 3, am I, to the best of my ability, attempting day by day, more by more, to be more convinced by oneness than separateness? And 4, despite the manipulation of fear, am I staying true to my conviction of a holistic view? And 5, will I continue to let myself be artificially manipulated into fear? Now, this author explains how, from her perspective, we all come from the earth and must return to her. She says we're made, all of us, of the same stuff that sea, soil, stars are made of. She says, we breathe the same air that our ancestors breathed. And she says that when we touch someone, we leave a particle of our skin behind and pick up a packet new to carry with us. In other words, she says, our merging together is literal, is not just a nice metaphor. It's what's going on. And she says that the sooner we realize it, the happier and safer and saner we will be. And she says that if you are one of those people who do see the bigger picture of oneness or are called to it, then this is a very important time for you to commit to it. To reach out in ever-expanding circles of affinity and embrace. Those are her words. Poetry. Ever-expanding circles of affinity and embrace. And that gives rise to considerations in me again. Can I expand beyond conversations I already agree with? Can I expand beyond communities, activities, routines, foods that I am already comfortable with? Oh, I love that phrase, circle of affinity, because affinity implies kinship, and kinship requires empathy. Can I do it? We talked about that in the past weeks, how developing this kinship, well, an easy, effective way is to begin to ask questions with the mindset to listen, to learn, to honor, to connect, to understand, so that we can go beyond the artificial division and manipulated resentments and fear that are there. Which reminds me of something that our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, said. He said, it's quite alarming. He said that you and I, we already know that it is not a natural order of things for people to be at war with each other. He said, we already know that the human heart is instinctively kind and naturally peace-loving. And he said that if we are to promote peace and kindness and freedom for all, that the place to begin for a metaphysician is in our own individual consciousness, because that will lead to and show up in the actions that we take and the decisions that we make and the illusions of separateness that we break, because there is a powerful good in the universe and it flows through us and it's directed by our choices and it's shaped by our beliefs and it's colored by the warmth of our feelings, and it is a power that we give form to in this world when we treat each other with respect and loving kindness. I invite you to take a deep breath in with me and exhale into a moment of prayer as we each in our own way turn to consider that source from which we come. I recognize that source as something that is beyond my words to describe. The living Spirit, the Almighty, the everywhere present, the energy of creation, the mind of God. And I recognize it so that I may identify myself as an inheritor of its qualities, so that I may say, and let this be true for anyone who identifies it with themselves with it, that there is an infinity of love within me that I did not create, that there is an endlessness of my ability to connect that I did not create. And that through this word of prayer, I am rooting myself in that and calling it forth to clarify my mind, shape my action, and form my words. And I know as sure as the sun shines today that as I speak this word of prayer and identify myself with that which I call the natural state of my spiritual being, that according to spiritual law, something is happening on the unseen side of life, making the way clear before me so that as I move forward into this world, I become a more mindful presence in the world, an ambassador of light, for the good of all and to the harm of none. And I celebrate this. I give thanks that something wonderful is happening even now. And I hold my heart open with compassion for those who are suffering everywhere. And I recommit myself to not forget them. And together we say, and so it is.